So we have more members here, but the members are all inside right now for the auditions that are taking place for a casting call for an upcoming film. So more people will be out shortly.
What film is that, Kurt? Can you hear me, Kurt?
He was able to hear us about a minute ago, maybe when he moved something.
Oh, okay. Well, hi, Michael.
Hi.
Do you do you happen to know what movie they're auditioning for or film that they're auditioning
No,
for?
he just said film, so I'm not sure. But yeah, he was able to
I
hear me
posted
about a minute ago, right before you joined. He might be trying to figure it out right now.
Or he specifically put us on mute because I joined.
wasn't you, Lori. I accidentally plugged the HDMI cable, so I had to restart it.
Oh, no worries, Kurt.
Uh, so we have a film that Tom Cooley, who is one of our Klamath Film members, is doing a casting call for tonight. I posted about it on klamathfilm.org as well as on our social media sites. So you can find out exactly what the details are of that. I know they'll still have needs coming up. It is not a paid gig, but they do have needs for all kinds of different cast and crew if people are interested in being involved in it.
Cool. Right on.
Cool. Right on. So David is here, Tom is here, Gary's here. A bunch of other people are inside right now. Andrew is going to be joining us. Got a frog in my throat, sorry. I need to order a drink. Andrew's going to be joining us again tonight as our featured guest because of the technical issues that we had last time, that things got cut short. There's a lot going on, obviously, with the film festival. It's coming up soon. I've been fully immersed in that for days on end, but I guess we might as well get started for now and wait for those who are inside to come join us a little bit later. Andrew's probably going to join us about 6:30 or so. First of all, how is everybody doing? I see Michael, Lori, Mary Jane. Thank you for joining us, as always. Michael, how are you doing?
Oh, not too bad.
Not too
Just
bad.
kind of working on a few things for the end and figuring out fall term.
Well, I would say introductions, but I think Lori, Mary Jane, and Michael, we all know each other pretty well at this point. So
Yeah.
Lori, of course, has a film in our film festival this year. She is the only Klamath Film member who got a film in this year. So congrats on that.
Yeah,
you want to talk about your film a little bit?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so my short film's The Puzzle. And I completed this gold puzzle, and I did a stop motion short film, just showcasing, compiling the puzzle together and then taking it apart. But yeah, and then I just sort of narrate some of the thoughts that I had while completing this really challenging puzzle. Yeah, I don't know. I hope people like it, or at least it's cause you to potentially reflect, on life. But yeah.
Lori, you need to talk about the how you went about making it as well.
Oh, right. Now that you know that, Kurt, that's a whole lot. It makes the short film a whole lot more interesting.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so I shot it over Memorial Day weekend, and I put the puzzle on the floor so that I could take the pictures a little bit easier. And I had a my Canon PowerShot camera. And so basically, over those 3 days, I did over 700 squats, because to remove a piece of the puzzle, I had to squat down and then like come back up to take the picture because I didn't have a camera tripod. And so it was pretty physically demanding. Because I normally don't do 700 squats in a weekend. um but yeah, so I guess it makes it more memorable in that aspect. But and then the tech, I just used free software to for the recording and to edit that, as well as to compile the actual, pictures all together. And then I compiled all the pictures, and then I just, I was watching it, and then I just talked, and that's sort of how the narration came about.
Perfect. Thank you, Lori. And Mary Jane was one of our students in our August film camp. We did our camp in mid-August for a week, and with the whirlwind of information, parading people with everything they needed to know how to make a film at home with minimal equipment. Mary Jane stuck with us every day.
Yes.
Just say
Oh, I have a
two
hard.
films that were made by students in that 1 week are both going to be shown at the Klamath Film Festival. Mary, how are you doing? Mary
Hello.
Jane, hello.
Oh, okay. It's you're cutting out a little bit. Yes, I'm doing fine. I enjoyed the week. I never did come up with a film as of yet, but I have footage, and um, we're working on the program and trying to, just get it all together. And it'll take a little more time than a week, but I'm hoping to come up with a short.
Well, at least now you have the information.
Exactly right. And yes, and that's why I found it very valuable, because now I have the information. It'll take me a little time to get to get everything worked out and things, but I do plan on pursuing that. Thank you.
Do you already have a topic for your short film, Mary?
Yeah, I do. It's about a gardener who can't go pick out her plants because of the virus. She's stuck at home, and it's just creative ways that she creates her garden
Hmm.
with a message there. It's
Sure.
even though life has changed, it doesn't have to be bad. It can still be beautiful. So
Hmm.
anyway,
Is this slightly based on true events?
yeah. Yeah.
Well, it sounds very cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, the film camp sounds nice. I've been meaning to watch the recordings of it. What'd you say, Mary, was like the biggest surprise thing you learned from it?
Pardon me?
Oh, like the biggest thing that you learned from well, I keep calling it the film camp, but the film fellowship kind of thing.
Well, I just really, it was a lot of information packed in a week, and I just found all the how-to information just really valuable to know. And yeah, I just enjoyed it all. It's hard for me to pick out one thing. It's just because everything kind of sort of fit together, and leading to the end result of making a short. So I don't know.
Right.
out just one individual thing. I enjoyed all the sessions. I did miss a little bit, but not too much. And so
Okay.
Was
Well, no, good
was
to know.
there yeah, was there any of the speakers that you particularly enjoyed?
I, that's hard for me to answer as well. I enjoyed them all.
Well, that's great as well. Better than you dislike them all.
I just, yeah, it was a lovely week. I enjoyed it. It was a busy week for me, and that was probably part of the reason I didn't get further along with my short. But like I say, I have a lot of time ahead of me.
Excuse me, can anybody hear me?
Yeah. Hello.
Hey, so did I put the right number in to play bingo?
Yeah, this is for the Klamath Film meeting. For,
Did I,
Klamath
am I
Film?
too late?
No,
Am
we're
I
just
too
kind of getting
late?
started.
Oh, okay, all right, I'm new at this.
It's quite all right. Too many people here at Media MPs are on their cell phones right now, so it's causing some Wi-Fi issues.
Okay.
So apologies, Mary Jane, Michael, Lori, for getting cut off there. I did launch
Okay.
the meeting from home so that the admin at least always has consistent internet.
Okay. I'm
So
Leah, by the way.
for our new guest, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name's Leah.
Leah, hello.
Hello
Are you
there.
here? Are you here in Klamath Falls?
Yes, sir.
And is this your first time attending a Klamath Film meeting? I think so,
Yes,
right?
it is.
So
Yeah.
what are you interested in as far as being a part of Klamath Film?
I don't really know what all y'all have to offer yet.
Oh,
I
okay.
just saw the bingo and I thought, that sounds like fun.
Well, welcome. Well, I'll give a brief
Thank you,
rundown
sir.
then. We are a
Great.
nonprofit. We're a nonprofit organization based here in Klamath Falls. We've been around for 9 years. We promote and support filmmaking all throughout the Klamath Basin. We are the official film liaison office for Klamath County. So anytime that there's a film production that comes through the area, we help coordinating that with local cast and crew. We're helping out with shoot locations,
Oh,
permits, stuff like that.
that sounds fun.
Yeah. We put on various film screenings throughout the year. And we put on an annual film festival that's coming into its 8th year, and that's coming up in just a couple of weeks. September 18th through the 20th
Oh,
is going to be our
wow. That'd be neat.
our film festival welcomes any film that was made in the past calendar year by an Oregon filmmaker or shot in the state of Oregon. So we have 36 films. 36 films this year that we're going to be showing, both shorts and feature lengths, at the Ross Ragland Theater, as well as available online behind a paywall, Netflix style, on demand, so people can watch from home.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds interesting.
Leah, have you done any filming or any acting, or have you ever had an interest in any of that?
Oh, no, I've never done that at all. Not that. I've written some songs and things that, they're just like, around the house kind of songs,
Well, there's always there's a very symbiotic relationship between music and film. Music pushes the emotion of film. So it adds an accents to whatever the visual may be. So there's a lot of our membership that are also musicians.
Oh, okay. I also write little children's rhyming storybooks.
Fantastic.
I've got a whole series. I made a whole series of those, but they're just self-published so far.
So, Leah, are you a film fan? Do you have a favorite movie?
No, not really. Just, I like Edward Scissorhands. That kind of it. Yeah, I don't get to see very many movies.
Okay. Well, there'll be an opportunity coming up in a couple of weeks here. with the film
Okay.
festival taking place. So,
Yeah, that sounds fun.
so these meetings, we meet once a month, first Thursday of every month at 6 p.m. It is a collective of people all throughout the region who have an interest in film or work in film in some capacity. Um, the meetings are open to the public, but if you attend, a couple of them and you want to keep coming back, we do ask that people become official members. Membership is only $25 a year, and that does provide
Okay.
ticket discounts for all of our events that we take place. In
Okay.
addition, we have a vast collection of equipment that people can check out to use for
Uh-huh.
for production purposes. So if someone is working on a video or they have an idea for a video and they don't have all the
Mm-hmm.
right gear, we have cameras, we have microphones, lighting,
Oh, wow.
backdrops, all sorts of stuff that people can check out for free as long as they're an active
Oh,
paying member.
that's cool. Sounds good.
Well, welcome, Leah. We appreciate you joining us. And tonight we're going to be joined every month for these meetings. We have a different featured guest. Our guest tonight
Uh-huh.
is going to be Andrew Gay, who is the head of the Southern Oregon University Film Program. So
Uh-huh.
he should be
Okay.
joining us in about another 10 minutes or so to talk about what he does with
Okay.
SOU. So for the
Uh-huh.
time being, I guess I should talk about the film festival for all of our members.
Yeah, well,
First of
thank you
all,
for the welcome.
yeah, no problem. Thank you for joining us. You're welcome to join us again come October, and we will have a lot more information about the film festival coming up soon. So stay on board, and I'll tell you all about the film fest.
Thank you, sir.
So for Michael, since he helped out with this a lot, I should turn the mic and mention we have brochures now. We just got these printed. So these came from Smith Bates. We will have them in local restaurants. We'll have them at the Chamber of Commerce. Actually, they're already at the Chamber of Commerce and Discover Klamath and places like that where people can pick up free brochures for Flying Klamath Film. We are working on our official program. It's not totally done yet, but it's coming together pretty well. We're also printing lanyards right now. We're printing Klamath Film stickers. We are not doing T-shirts this year, but we are in need of volunteers. Lori has already volunteered. Michael has volunteered, and thank you both of you for being a part of it. We're going to need volunteers for all 3 days. The structure this year for the film festival is going to be starting off at 6 o'clock Friday, September 18th. We're going to have a virtual get together as opposed to our street fair that we did last year because of COVID. So we will be doing an online get together of all of our filmmakers, as well as sponsors, ticketed guests. We're hoping to line up some live musical performances for that. Specifically musicians who appear in the film This Is Tim, which is one of the documentaries that we're showing this year. And then at 8 o'clock, we'll be showing the documentary The Last Blockbuster. It's a documentary by Taylor Morden, who had a film in last year as well. The film he showed last year was called Pick It Up, Ska in the 90s. It was my favorite film from last year's festival. This film is tons of fun, very nostalgic. Anyone who grew up going to Blockbuster will enjoy it very much. So it profiles the rise and fall of Blockbuster Video. So that's our only film that we're showing Friday night. Saturday is going to be our feature films. We start at 11 a.m. We will show At the Video Store, which is also very similar to The Last Blockbuster, but it's more so about the mom and pop video stores, the phenomenon of the 80s and 90s. At 1:30, we'll show One Dead Dog, which is a comedy horror film about a family of serial killers who meet a squatter at the family cabin who also happens to be a serial killer.
Oh, God.
It's a very fun film. It's
Plot
funny.
spoiler.
It's good. Since you said, Leah, that you like Edward Scissorhands, I think you'll really like that film.
Yeah.
It has the same kind of
Yeah, I
twisted,
do.
weird vibe.
Yeah.
And we'll have the entire cast there as well. The entire cast and directors coming down, so we'll be doing a Q&A with them afterwards. Saturday at 3:30, we're showing This Is Tim, A Musical Life, which profiles Tim Ellis, who is a famous musician in Portland for years and years and years, who ran a recording studio up there and recorded every band that came through Portland that you could name. He died a couple of years ago from cancer, and his daughter made this documentary about her dad's life. So that's going to be at 3:30. At 6 o'clock, we're showing a documentary called Illegal, which follows a illegal immigrant who fled El Salvador in the 1980s during the war that was happening down there, settled in Southern Oregon, became a naturalized citizen, started a business, has become a very prolific citizen in the Ashland Medford area, member of Rotary, does tons of work all around the region, has hired a bunch of people. So an example is someone who escaped just deplorable conditions and really made a great life for himself in Oregon. Saturday night, we are in negotiations right now to do a potential test screening. Now, this will not be shown in Oregon, in our online platform. It'll only be at the theater. But we have a film that was approved through our judging process and is now in negotiations to possibly get national distribution. And so it's an ongoing deal. We may or may not get the film, but Frank and Zed is a all puppet comedy horror film. Leah, once again, this one is kind of right up your alley. It follows a zombie and a Frankenstein who are buddies, and they're terrorizing the local village, and they have to rely on each other to survive, and the villagers form a mob to kind of come after them. It's a lot of puppet gore and violence, but instead of blood and guts, it's cotton that's flying everywhere. Very fun film. If we get that film, we'll be showing it at 8 o'clock on Saturday night. Sunday, we'll pick up again at 11 a.m. and we'll be showing our K through 12 shorts, as well as our 2 film fellowship winners. So the film fellowship was the film camp that Mary Jane went through. So we'll do our K through 12s and then go into our northern shorts and then our southern shorts, and then we will do our awards ceremony around 7:15 p.m. Throughout the film fest, we will be doing a ton of live streaming, and we've never done this before for the film festival, but we will be live streaming all of our intros, our Q&As with filmmakers, and our awards ceremony throughout the festival, so people can tune into those for free. In addition, our entire festival is being made available on demand through eventive.org, and tickets should be going on sale in the next couple of days, where people can watch the entire festival on demand. Through Roku, through Apple TV, or streaming online through their computers. So that is the structure of the Film Fest. Inside the Ragland, we're going to have a display of vintage cameras. We're going to be giving away autographed posters from some of our filmmakers. We are going to have a whole bunch of film gear on display, including a working 8mm projector and showing old 8mm films. And we'll also have a big screen inside that will be showing via live stream all the stuff that's happening inside the theater as well. So people can watch either inside the lobby, inside the theater, or they can watch from home online. That is the plan for KIF 2020. Any questions before we move on to other things about the film festival?
It's a busy day, busy weekend,
Absolutely. I should talk about safety protocols as well. For our volunteers, you'll be involved with this. Hey, and there's Andrew. Hello, sir. I was just talking about the film festival and about to get into safety protocols. So our plan for the film festival is going to be we're going to have multiple tables outside the door. One will be checking temperatures with a touchless thermometer. If anyone has an above normal temperature, they will be denied entry and advised to seek medical help. We will be contact tracing. So before anyone can enter, they need to leave their name, phone number, address, zip, so that if for some reason someone does test positive, we have tracking of every single person that was at the theater. Additionally, masks will be required to enter. We will have hand sanitizer. We will have disposable gloves. We will strongly encourage people to be very liberal when it comes to use of hand sanitizer. And only then, if you pass those protocols, will you be given your lanyard at the door and allowed entry. we are only allowed 100 people inside the theater total. That's 100 minus our staff and volunteers, minus the theater staff, minus our sponsors, minus our filmmakers and their guests. So there will be very limited ticket availability for the general public. Our selling tickets are based on a head count of how many we know are coming from our sponsors and filmmakers. So just know if you're planning to come in person, we will have a very limited number of ticket sales to the general public. And that's why we're doing the online platform, and we're encouraging everyone to do the online platform.
We can watch the movies and everything online, right? That's what you said, yeah?
Yes, yeah. So you'll be able to buy an online ticket, and you'll be able to see all of the films online from the comfort of home, and still be able to watch all of the live streams and the Q&As and everything from home. In fact, the online platform has exclusive Q&As that we have already pre-recorded with every single one. Watch a Q&A with the filmmaker after they watch the film for every single film.
Oh, okay. That sounds good.
So before we move on to our guest tonight, and Andrew, just so you know, we have a bunch of our filmmakers. We're actually doing a casting call tonight for an upcoming film here in Klamath. So Tom and David and Gary and a whole bunch of others are inside right now with actors. And once they're done with all the table reading, they'll all come out and join us. Anyone have any questions about Klamath Film ongoings before we jump into things with our featured guest?
No,
Lori, Michael, Leah, Mary Jane?
I'm good.
Okay.
I can't think of anything at this time.
Okay, well, save your questions then for Andrew. So, Andrew, thank you for joining us. I launched the meeting from home on my home computer and then brought my laptop here. And I think that has resolved our connectivity issues that we had last time. So Andrew was our guest in August, but things got cut off short because of Wi-Fi problems, because we're doing this meeting during the dinner rush and there was everyone on their cell phone soaking up all the Wi-Fi. So if I get disconnected, the meeting doesn't end. Thanks, David. We normally do introductions, but everyone except for our one new guest, Leah, already knows each other. So maybe for Leah's sake, we should do real quick introductions and then have Andrew come in. So Leah, my name's Kurt Lidke. I'm one of the editors for the Herald and News, and I'm also the executive director of Klamath Film. I took over as executive director in January. Like you know, we meet once a month. We've been meeting here at Mia's and Pia's on the patio from 6 to 8, first Thursday of every month.
Okay.
Michael, Lori, or Mary Jane, if you could introduce yourselves, and then David is sitting behind me here lurking as well. Lori, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Lori. I've been a Klamath Film member for a number of years, and I volunteer with the organization, and I've been a judge for the KIF submissions. And this year I submitted a short film, The Puzzle, into KIF, and it was selected. So if you want to watch that, that is in the Southern Shorts section of KIF. But yeah, I normally do backstage work at the Ross Raglan when they're doing their performances and lighting. But yeah, I just sort of like art and creative endeavors. That's sort of me.
Okay. Sorry, I'm switching my mic up. We're all of a sudden getting a bunch of flies out here. Mary Jane, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Mary Jane, and I enjoy film. We often watch a movie. We rarely miss a night that we don't watch a movie. And I'm an artist. I like to do portraits in charcoal, mainly of children. And I have worked with children with disabilities for many years right now on a volunteer basis, but actually not, because school is virtual now. But it is something I will miss. But anyway, that's kind of me in a small nutshell.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Michael, oh, it looks like we lost Leah. Did we lose Leah? Yeah. Okay. Well, since we lost Leah, Michael, Lori, Mary Jane, we all know each other. So, David, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm David Reed, retired naval photographer, amateur filmmaker. Been with Klamath Film about 2012. Been vice president and a board member. I work on productions. I do acting, camera work, editing, costume making, prop making, and about whatever I can. Need help with something in production, let me know.
Cool.
What are those?
Those are our brand new brochures that we just got
For the Klamath stuff or the
for
independent
Klamath
guys?
Film, our organization.
Okay.
So our guest tonight is Andrew Gay. Andrew was our guest in August, and we ran into some glitches. Andrew and I co-taught the Klamath Film Film Fellowship in August, which was a whole lot of work, but also a lot of fun. We had, I think, 11 people participate, including Mary Jane, and we got 3 films finished out of that. And 2 of those films are going to be in the Klamath Independent Film Festival. So I was pretty darn proud of the students that they stuck with us through a whole lot of information and retained some of it at least and made some pretty remarkable films. So Andrew is the head of the SOU Digital Cinema program. So he spends all day teaching people about film. So Andrew, why don't you start off by telling us how you got into the film industry?
All right, take 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I don't recall who's on the last call. So apologies if you're having to hear the start of the story again. So I got into film kind of unexpectedly when I went to college thinking I was going to be a journalist, and while in college was working for a local newspaper and doing news, and even got an offer when I graduated to stay in that paper and for a full-time staff position. And I turned it down to go back to school, to go to film school after my best friend growing up since I was 10 got into film school, and which I guess had never really been the thing I thought about before. To me at that time, and this is around when I was thinking about going to college, which was the late 90s. Film just seemed like the thing that, like, you got into it if your like parents were rich producers, but there was no pathway. It wasn't something I knew that you could really do. And so when my friend did it and got in, I was like, well, maybe I should try. And so I applied to the same program that he got into and got in. That was the University of Central Florida in Orlando, which is at the time was famous for the Blair Witch. All the Blair Witch filmmakers came out of that program, and they all met there and made Blair Witch after graduating from that program together. So that school had a little bit of buzz at the time. And so I went to film school after having already finished a 4-year degree. I went back for a regular undergrad degree again because I was too chicken to try to go to grad school because I didn't know anything. And so because of that, because I was a little bit older than all my classmates, all my professors sort of like and also I got married really young. So I was both married and a little bit older. So all my professors just immediately started treating me like a peer more than the other students. And that was a huge advantage to me because they would like connect me to opportunities a lot. So one of the things that happened for me was that I got an internship at the local film commission there, and this is in Orlando, Florida, which their film commission covers four counties. And at that time, Orlando was a pretty big production. It's pretty much fallen out there, but everything's moved to Georgia. But at that time, Orlando was a pretty big production center. They were fond of calling themselves Hollywood East, which is kind of laughable now that you see how much that's really taken place in Georgia.
Yeah.
But at the time, they were very proud of themselves. And so there's a lot of production coming through there, and so that was a cool internship where I was oftentimes my task was they would like loan me out to productions in order to be a location scout. And so I got to scout for all kinds of different projects that were coming through there. And as a result of that, I got onto a funny film called Larry the Cable Guy Health Inspector, which was I don't know, probably like a $5 million feature starring Larry the Cable Guy as a health inspector. And it was, pretty terrible movie. It's out there somewhere. I think you might be able to find it on Amazon Prime or something. So I scouted a lot of the initial locations for that, and then I got brought on into the locations department, and I became a location assistant and was given a van of cones. And my job was when I worked for like a month of prep, just going to all the locations, helping secure all the contracts with the location manager, and prepping all the location stuff, like getting tents and working with vendors and all the permitting plans, all that kind of stuff. And then during the shoot, I got a van, and my van was full of cones, and my job was every day to drive around putting out cones for like where the trucks were going to be or the parking that needed to be blocked off and that kind of thing. And then at the end of the day, I load up the cones, and that was my job. I was cone guy. So that was my sort of illustrious big Hollywood introduction. But there's some cool other actors that were on it. Tony Hale from Arrested Development and Veep was on that. One of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. I've just forgotten his name, but the guy who played Biff in Back to the Future was on this film. He was wonderful. Joey Pantaleone was in the film. He was honestly kind of a jerk. But it was a cool project to work on, and that got me started. And so because of that film, I started while I was still in film school, and this was only my first. I think this was my first summer after starting film school that I worked on that. The film commission got such good feedback on my work from the producers that they put me in the film book as both a location manager and a production coordinator. I had no idea what a production coordinator really did. But I got a call pretty soon after after getting that listing from Spike TNA Wrestling for Spike TV. Was shot in Orlando, and they were doing a promo video there for that. And there was a LA production company, and they called me asking if I was available. And I was like, sure. And then they asked me what my rate was, and I had no idea what production coordinators were supposed to make. And so I quoted, I think I said something like 130. No, I think I said 150, some ridiculously low number. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. We can't go a dollar higher than 130. I was like, okay, yeah, okay, I'll take that. And then after I hung up, I called a production coordinator I knew, and I said, I don't know what your job is. Can you explain it to me? Because I have to go do this now. And they're like, oh, great. Well, what's your rate? And I was like, I said 150, but they said they couldn't pay me more than 130. And so this production coordinator starts laughing hysterically. And she's like, they know you're a sucker. And I'm like, why? She's like, because a production coordinator on a project like this would never make less than like 350 a day. So they knew right away that they were getting someone who was a patsy. So I did that shoot, and it was kind of true. Like, it was this really hilarious LA producer who was just turned her nose down at everything about Orlando. It was like, oh, I couldn't believe she was there. It was so below her. But she ended up getting picketed by the union because Florida's right to work state, so it was a non-union show, but all of the crew were IATSE guys, and they all walked off, and so it was just huge, just crazy disaster. And this is again my first actual paid gig, because on the Larry the Cable Guy thing, I wasn't paid; it was still part of my internship. And so I got like to learn all the ins and outs of like solving a union crisis on my first production. That was fun. And then from there, I just kept working as a freelancer while going to school. So I was doing production coordinating, I was doing production management, I was doing a lot of locations, but I tried to get out of that as fast as I could. I never liked locations, particularly scouting. I got a lot of scouting jobs, but I always hated them because location scouting, like the kinds of jobs in Orlando, there was a lot of like commercial shoots. They wanted houses, and so there'd be a lot of like knocking door to door and scaring housewives. Like you're like with your camera, like, hey, can I come and like photograph your kitchen, which is just freaking people out. So I always hated those jobs. But the nice thing was that I pretty much was never a PA. I kind of skipped most of the I mean, I did a few PA gigs for people I liked, but I didn't have to do them. And was doing like AD work and UPM work pretty quick. And then I was, my initial thought was I would graduate and then maybe stay in the area for a while, or maybe make the leap to a bigger production city. But my program, my film school at University of Central Florida, UCF, was starting a MFA program. And at the time, they were kind of promising this crazy plan, which was that this was going to be a feature filmmaking. Every other film MFA in the country, you make short films, and this was going to be you make a feature film in this MFA. And they said they were going to like pay a $50,000 budget for it. And then they also offered me a free ride, so I got to go to school for free, and they paid me as a teaching assistant, and I got insurance, which I hadn't had insurance like in years. And I got to defer my loans from going to film school. And so it seemed like a great plan. So I went ahead and did that. It turned out the 50,000 thing was a lie. Like they thought they were going to find big donors, but they never did. And so we had to raise our own money. And I almost quit multiple times because it was kind of a clusterfuck, part of my language. Because it was a new program, and they really didn't know what they were doing. But I learned a lot doing it myself, and I also at the same time was teaching, because as a teaching assistant, I think most other graduate programs, you're mostly doing like grading for other people, but they were cheap enough that that they were having all the grad students teach all the classes in the undergrad. So I was teaching all the classes I had just taken. And a lot of it was like me doing a better job than some of my teachers had done. And so my first teaching class, I had really taken like such a focus on. I really want to do a really good job, so I'd really prepared this class. And at the same time, I was doing a big production coordinating job on a reality show called Rock of Love season 3. Rock of Love is, for those of you who don't remember it, it was a VH1 reality show starring Bret Michaels of the band Poison, trying to find love. And this is season 3, so you can see how his search was going. And the way that show worked is basically at least that season, I've never seen an episode of the show, to be honest with you, but the way that season was running is, I guess they were doing like a tour of America. So I don't know if that was the way the previous seasons had been or not, but so they've been on a road, and so they had they were going to have 2 Florida episodes, one in Orlando and one in Miami. So I was booked for a week in Orlando as the local production coordinator. It was this huge traveling kind of circus, and so there were like I think there were like 11 other production coordinators, all of them traveling. I was the one local one. So my job was like to hire all the PAs, hire all the day player, like camera and sound people that, to bring in to accentuate what they had with them. And the way that worked is that like Bret Michaels would party from midnight like starting at midnight, he would like wake up and start partying, and then I would come in the morning and like work all day prepping the next day. And so I didn't really see anything that was happening. I was working in an office 30 miles away from the set, which they were shooting at Universal Studios. And my job was just miserable. It was like pushing papers in this hotel conference center, and I was getting like this happened where there's some issue that there was a problem and it had to be solved. And at the same exact time, I had someone calling me on a landline, one coordinator calling me on landline with one set of instructions, one coordinator calling me on my cell phone with another set of instructions, another coordinator texting me with different instructions, an email with different instructions, and a fax with different instructions, and someone on the radio giving me different. So at least 7 of the 11 other coordinators all thought they were my boss. And really, coordinators that were supposed to be equal were all supposed to be reporting to the production manager, but and they all conflicted with each other, and there was no right way to do it because no matter what, I was going to piss someone else off.
I've been there, Andrew. When I was in LA, I would on occasion edit music videos. And so there's all the band members,
the label and the
management, their attorney, the record label, production team, all with 20 different opinions of how frame by frame everything should look.
Yeah, exactly. So, and on that same show, like it was just terribly run, and some people had died from the show when they were driving through Ohio. They were doing like some shitty things, like they had PAs who were driving buses and things like that, like they didn't want to pay Teamsters. So some PAs who were driving some kind of vehicle, I don't know if it was a truck or a bus or something like that, but they fell asleep because they'd been working like a 14-hour day, and then were driving to another city, and then they killed 2 college girls. And then they shut down production for like a week, and then they were back up and running. Anyway, and then like I would get these calls, because again, I was only working in the day. I'd go at home at night, and I'd get calls from my PAs being like, hey, and like, why are you calling me? It's the middle of the night. And they'd be like, because my walkie died, and I was put on a lockup here 5 hours ago, and no one's come back for me, and no one's come to relieve me for lunch, and I need to go to the bathroom, and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, go home, I'll clock you out in the morning. Like, so they asked me to go to Miami with them, like, hey, we love you, would you like to come with? I'm like, nope, lose my number, please. And so this was the job I was doing while I was in grad school, and it was during the first term that I was ever teaching. And it was the job that made me question all of my life choices at that point, because I thought, I got into film because I want to be creative. I wanted to do things that were exciting and never like have the same thing every day. And here I was like, oh, I'm basically like an office organizer for the worst people on earth. That's not what I thought I was going to be doing with my life. And at the same time, I was teaching my first class, and this was a script analysis class where I was teaching students how to read and study screenplays in order to like to become better writers, but also like to direct actors and all that kind of stuff. And I was having so much fun in that class. It was the most fun I'd had in a sort of a professional environment. And so that was like a turning point for me, where I thought, well, maybe film is not my day job. Maybe this is something that continues to be a part of my life in terms of my creative outlets and other passions, but not how I make my money. Maybe I can be an educator. And so I started really focusing on my teaching and taking every opportunity to take different kinds of classes as a grad student, and just worked really hard at it. And then I had like my kind of decision point, because right after that, like I made that choice, and then I got a job offer to AD a Dick's Sporting Goods commercial for $1,000 a day. I would have had to cancel classes to do it, and I decided not to take that job. And when you turn down $1,000 a day job to teach, which,
what are you thinking?
Exactly. You actually love what you're doing when you turn down $1,000 a day job to teach. So that was like really that was the wake up moment. I was like, when I made that choice, I was like, oh, I'm a teacher. That's my identity now. Like I know who I am now. And so so from that point on, I mean, I did a few other, freelance gigs here and there, but I really, when you're freelancing, one of the things is like it's not even 3 strikes, you're out. Pretty much, if someone calls you twice and you're not available, they stop calling you. So wasn't really long before that became okay. I really have to make this work because I got to make my living now. When I graduated film school, my thesis advisor at UCF had passed away from a long battle with breast cancer. And so I ended up actually getting hired off the street at UCF for a 1-year position, covering all her classes. And after that year, they did a national search for a replacement for a 3-year term. And so I had to apply for that and had to compete for it, and I ended up getting it. So I was at UCF teaching for 4 years in both their grad and undergrad programs. And then that was because that was a visiting term, that was something that ended, meaning like, there was no way to they weren't allowed to keep me. They had to stop. That position ended. And so at that point I started just applying for jobs everywhere, and even briefly considered not teaching because it's such a hard thing to get jobs in. Honestly, there's just not that many teaching positions out there for film anymore. And so I was looking at, like, I had an interview actually in a production company in Florida, where they were looking to bring in a new full-time partner as a producing partner, and so I was interviewed for that and some other things. And then on a whim, one day I saw this job that was a 1-year teaching position in Ashland, Oregon, which I'd never been to Oregon at all, never heard of Ashland, Oregon. But I was sort of at this place where, like, all right, well, this door is closing here in Orlando. I don't know what my next step is. Hey, a year in Oregon might be interesting. And so I kind of applied on a whim, and then came here and actually fell in love with it, which is always a kind of a dangerous thing, because then you're going to be sad when you don't get the job. And so I had an interview, and I got hired at SOU. And so I was actually, and so the interesting thing too is I had a job offer to run a film program in Fort Lauderdale, and that was a permanent position, running my own program, because it was a new program. They basically said, we've committed to making a program. We don't have a program. We want to hire you to build it, which is really exciting. It was also like a lot of pressure, because it was actually less pay than I'd been making at UCF for way more responsibility, and also living in a much more expensive city. Fort Lauderdale was a lot more expensive than Orlando. And so it just didn't feel like the right timing. And so I turned down a job with no other job, which was scary. And then instead opted for a 1-year job and 3,000 miles away, which didn't make any logical sense, but just something felt right about it. And so when I got here, SOU didn't have a film program. We had a communication major, which had always had video production as some component. And so they've been teaching video production for like 30 years, but there's just never been a full program of it. And basically I was hired with the interest of developing something more than that. And so after 1 year on a visiting line, they offered me a 2nd year on a visiting line. And then in my 2nd year, they converted it to a tenure track position. So now I have been at SOU 6 years, and I am tenured and have been promoted to associate professor. So I'm locked in for as long as SOU survives, which, knock on wood, in our current financial situation, who knows. But since then, we've been building the digital cinema program. And so it was funny, because my first meeting with my colleagues at SOU, I was looking at all the classes. There's actually a lot of classes in film production. And I was like, oh, there's you have all the curriculum here. Has anyone ever thought about doing a film major? And literally everyone in the room started laughing. I said, what? And they're like, people have been trying to make a film major here for 30 years. It's never happened, never will happen. Never at SOU. I can guarantee you that. It'll never be a film major at SOU. And so, people who know me, when you say things like that to me, that means like, okay, so now I have my assignment. Like, my assignment now is to prove you wrong. So that day I started building the film program. And it was actually funny, because one of the things we discovered is that there was this weird hang up that had to do with old historical grudges deep in the university and in the Ashland community, which is strange, about the word film. And it's like the things that are red tape in the world. But so when we called it digital cinema, suddenly there was like, oh, this sounds exciting and new. What is this thing? And so it took 5 years, but what we started with was a digital cinema concentration in the communication major. That quickly became the fastest growing concentration in our major. Um, and we started getting a reputation just from those students in that program around the state, like Tim Williams, the film commissioner of Oregon, was very excited about what we were doing. People from OMPA were very excited about what we were doing. People behind Portlandia and that kind of thing were very excited about what we were doing. So suddenly the administration started noticing that, wait a minute, we have this thing here where like it's actually attracting new students. It's getting statewide attention. Maybe we should actually invest. And so our the major I designed launched last fall with our first year, and immediately I think 50 of our existing comm majors switched into it. And so we already had our first graduating class last year because we had a bunch of students who just converted to the new major. So we've already had our first graduating class, and this year we already have a record-setting incoming class of I think 24 students. So that's the largest number we've had to start a year. So it's an exciting program, and one of the things that was kind of drew me to this area is the fact that is that when I did research about it, that there was such a vibrant film culture in this region, between the film festivals and the different film organizations, and just that there are so many actually professional people doing it, not just professional like crafts people, but also a lot of independent filmmakers who are passionate about it. And so, if on like paper, I was like, Ashland, what am I moving to Mayberry? And like, I don't know if this is for me. But then when I started doing the research, I was like, wow, no, this is actually like, this is a real film scene. There's this whole area, and not just Ashland, but obviously Klamath and just the whole region has so much stuff going on with film that I was like, no, actually, this is kind of this is a parallel move. And if anything, it might be more exciting because rather than being like a huge city where there's so much other competing things going on, like here you can actually be a part of this community and sort of like find your place in it, and that's been totally true. So I've loved every second of being in this region, and I've been involved in what was SOFAM and now Film Southern Oregon and OMPA, and have had a great relationship with Klamath Film and both the Klamath Independent Film Festival and Ashland Independent Film Festival. So I love it.
And we have quite a few films that are in the film festival this year that came from SOU students. So I'm pretty happy with the production that's coming out of there. Why don't you tell us about what people learn with the digital cinema program? Like what does the program offer?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll be honest, we're growing as quickly as they will allow us to grow. We're constantly adding new things. Honestly, I think it's one of those things where it's difficult because right now enrollment across this is true of all universities. Enrollment is just way down because of the COVID impacts. But actually digital cinema is up. And so like we have more demand than we can meet in a certain way. And I think the only reason we're not getting to hire more faculty is just because like the administration sort of like, well, we can't hire more faculty when we're telling everybody else that we have to cut their budgets, so it's like a political thing. But we're we're two things. We're 100% storytelling and we're 100% hands-on production. So like, obviously we do some history and theory, like we think that's important stuff. But like PSU, Portland State, it has a lot of national recognition for being a great film school, and it is. But it's really a theory and criticism film school. They have production, and it's mainly because it's Portland. They have a ton of professionals there. They can teach adjunct classes and stuff like that. But you can actually take
kind of that way too.
What's that?
The U of O program is pretty similar.
Yeah, exactly. To the studies program. Yeah. Our PSU, it's like, and in fact, I think last year was the first year that you could go to PSU and get a degree degree and you had to take a production class. Before that, the program like didn't even require production. It was just like an elective you could do if you wanted to. Now they require at least one, but it's a film studies program, and so is University of Oregon's program. But we are 100% like come in and make stuff. Like start getting your hands on the equipment, start making stuff. Our goal, like for us, what we hope we teach students who can do two things. Every student coming out of the digital cinema program should be able to walk onto a set as a PA and not look like an idiot, right? Like get your first entry level job on a film or television set and like, okay, I know who the people are. I know what the equipment is. I know I'm not allowed to touch anything. I know I have to say, copy that, right? Like I can do all that stuff and get rehired. So that's one. Two, we know that not every student will want to do that. And the other option is that we want every student to be able to be that sort of multi-hyphenate creative, so that if you're thinking, oh, actually, no, what I want to do is I want to go back to my hometown and start up my own production company, and I'm going to make commercials for restaurants or local business or whatever. Like you're a shooter, editor, producer, director. You can do all those things. You understand the skills. You know enough about the business side of it to like run a small business. And all that kind of thing. So that's really kind of the aim for our program is we want people who can both be like the multi-hyphenate creative lead, but also if they want to do that, like, all right, no, I just want to move to production center and work my way up, they know how to do that. And so those are really our areas. We only have right now it's 1 degree program, so we don't have like concentrations within our thing, but students can sort of self-concentrate. So every student gets a capstone at the end of their experience. So they do a year-long project. Most of our students direct because that's what they want to do. Like they direct their own film. But there are those students who are like, they discover on the way, like, oh no, I'm not a director. I want to be a cinematographer. I want to go work out in the camera department. And so those students can focus in that area and take classes that are focused on that area. And then like they can do as their capstone, be someone's cinematographer or someone's editor or someone's producer. So we have those opportunities for students to sort of like self-concentrate on what they're interested in. And we've had success with that. Like, so for instance, one of our students who graduated 2 years, right? Actually, she consulted on the building of the major, but unfortunately graduated right before it started. She's one of our real success stories. Like she was someone who loved camera, and now she is in the Cinematographers Guild as a digital utility. So we have success stories of students who are going out there and being recognized as knowing their shit and getting on there and not having to languish as PAs forever, but getting into the department that they really want to be working in. Right now we're working on a couple of new programs. We have in the works this year that means that they will, when we put curriculum forward, it's a year-long approval process. So hopefully in fall of 2021, we anticipate launching a new certificate in documentary production. And that would be something that you don't have to be a degree-seeking student to pursue. And so it's designed to be a 1-year certificate where if you wanted to come full-time, you could just do this certificate for 1 year. Or, if you're not a traditional student, you don't want to do a year, full-time, you can spread it out and whatever, take a class here and there. But we're really designing that for, we see, particularly in this region, a love of documentary and a lot of people who are like, I'm passionate about this issue and I want to make a documentary about it, but they don't know where to start. And so that program is really designed for those kinds of people. And then we have another one that we're building. I think it's going to just be called like film and television production. And that's a 1-year production certificate that's really designed for people who don't want a 4-year college experience, but just want to go in and be a PA. And like they want that starting training to go into the career track of trying to get into film. And so those are 2 programs. We're also working with theater on a new program that we hope to call like something like a production, a TV or a stage and screen production certificate. So that would be a certificate where if you wanted to work in both film and television and theater production and know like all the ins and outs of the lighting and rigging of theater as well, that'll be a 1-year certificate in stage and screen. So those are our programs right now that we're doing. We're also looking to possibly launch a screenwriting minor in the next couple of years.
Okay. Mary Jane, Michael, Lori, any of you have questions for Andrew? Otherwise, it'll just be us bullshitting.
Yeah, you mentioned sort of the analysis side within the program. What sort of courses are offered on that side?
So all of our students are required to take a one history of cinema class, one intro to film analysis class. Those are both like for foundational level classes that most students take as freshmen. And they actually currently both of those also count in as sort of like general education requirements. And then we have a requirement for what we call a theory and practice requirement. There are a lot of different classes that meet that. The theory and practice courses are courses that are not production courses per se, so we don't teach production in them, but they're classes that look at like film theory, but try to make connections to practice. For instance, our most popular one right now is film theory and practice documentary. And so that class looks a lot like a traditional like documentary studies class where you're watching documentaries, learning about the theory of documentary, like looking at like really like landmark documentaries and talking about like the ethics and all that kind of stuff of documentary. But instead of like writing papers, which normally would happen in those kinds of classes, you make documentaries. And this is a class that is actually open to non-majors, so the requirements are like it's not really being graded on the production level. So we have students in there who are like English majors and they sign up for this class thinking it's like, oh great, I can write papers about documentaries, and they're like, no, you don't get to write a paper. And they're like, what? And like, don't worry, just grab your cell phone and you can make a documentary. But what we're grading in that class is not like the quality of production, but have you, from watching other documentaries and learning about the theory of documentary, can you put that into practice and understand like, okay, these are the conventions, these are like the techniques that people use, and I understand why. So that's kind of all of our theory and practice classes do something like that, where, so for instance, we have like one in genres, one in auteurs, one in like world cinemas. I'm actually getting ready to put forward a new one in like screenplay theory. And so all these are not creative technical classes, but rather than like writing a boring paper, we really want you to say, all right, well, what does it look like when you put this into practice now and you learn this theory and actually put it into action? The other class that all of our students take that's sort of a little more sort of academic like is they all have to take a class called creativity and research. And so, and that's like a real research intensive class of like how to do research, but it's all geared towards like your creative output. So, how do you do traditional academic research and really understand how to do that rigorous background work, but rather than like do it on like a boring research paper on something that's never going to be read again once you write it. How do you do that kind of research for a project that you really care about and want to do? So like if a student is thinking like, oh, my capstone, I really want to make a noir film. Great. So you're gonna seriously research noir, and you're gonna like understand all the theoretical underpinnings of noir, and you're gonna look at other noir films and that kind of thing. And so that's sort of the required courses that are sort of the more kind of theory and scholarship kind of courses that we require at SOU. And so you only have to take one of the film theory and practice classes, but we offer, I think there are 5 different courses right now, and we're adding other ones all the time.
Nice, thanks. Yeah, I wanted to ask because I go to Oregon Tech under the professional writers program, so obviously
Okay.
a lot of literature classes, some bleed over with the comms department, and some of my favorite classes over there have been Ben Bunting's sort of literature / film classes, but it's
Okay.
definitely not that production side or that more kind of hands-on side. It's more like his sci-fi in literature and film is actually a cyberpunk class, but you look at the
Okay.
genre as a whole. So there's like you're reading a novel and then watching the film adaptation, and you
Gotcha.
spend like a week on noir and how noir and sci-fi blended into cyberpunk and that kind of thing. So it's like I've definitely had the chance to enjoy that sort of like genre analysis side of it, or even I guess more of the literature side of appreciating film. So that's definitely kind of the lens I come from.
Gotcha.
And unfortunately, that's about as much as far as film classes I think that Oregon Tech offers. But
Right.
I'm always kind of curious to see what other options there are out there in case I ever actually have the chance to go check it out.
A
Right.
lot of our members are inside right now.
Oh, gotcha.
There's casting calls going on for upcoming film.
Well, Michael, we do have, it's interesting because we do have those students who start our program and then realize that they don't actually love production and that that they're actually more interested in like the sort of theory and criticism side. Um, right now, and actually, if we were able to hire another person, one of the areas that we might focus on is that area because um, for instance, we're only a 2 faculty full-time faculty department, and then we have a lot of term by term, faculty who come in adjuncts and teach classes here and there. But Christopher, Lucas, and I are the only ones who are full-time teachers, so we're having to cover our entire curriculum. We can bring in people to help, but we would love to be, right now we have such a demand on the production side that's difficult to offer those classes, that even the ones that we need to offer. And so, I think it's possible that if we see some economic recovery in the next couple of years, I think the digital cinema is going to be one of the targets for growth by the university because we are delivering. Now that may not help you because you might be looking for things in the short term, but I think I would love to offer more of that sort of cinema studies aspect to it. One of the things I think we might do, though, where maybe we might be a little different than what PSU or University of Oregon offers, is the route we've been taking with those students who want to do that is rather than saying, all right, so you're just going to opt out of production, is we're like, all right, well, we're going to show you how that you can still do production and be like film critics or film theorists, because one of the biggest things in film theory and criticism right now is the video essay. And I'm sure you've probably seen some of these video essays out there that are like just these great, sometimes they're like 5 minutes, sometimes they're like 20 minutes long, but they're these like really fantastic, exciting things to watch about how they break down a film or break down a particular technique or explain like a director's like style. What's that?
Oh, I was saying, yeah, I've watched quite a few of those. I do enjoy those a lot.
Yeah. So for our students who have been interested in, who are like, I don't want to really be like a director, that's not me, or I don't really want to work in the gear side of things, we're like, great, well, like do this kind of work, because this is going to set you apart, as opposed to someone who's just like, oh, well, I'm just gonna, I just want to like write papers about film. Again, who's going to see those papers? No one right now. But you make a video essay that's really awesome, that can go viral. And we actually have had students, a student in one of my classes a couple years ago made a video essay about comparing technique of Spielberg's with Fincher using the same technique, and it went viral, and it actually got shared by a couple of like major film magazine like Twitter accounts and stuff like that. And so our mind is always like, let's make sure like the things our students are doing are things that people can see. And so that's probably the route we would go if we wanted to build out like a kind of a film criticism track. It'd probably be something like a video essay track, and like really encourage students to do that kind of work that's very shareable. And it's still writing, and it's still criticism, and it's still theory and all that, but it's like, all right, how do you make that exciting for an audience and really make it help make a name for yourself?
Michael,
Awesome,
by the
thank you.
way, has been an intern with Klamath Film basically all year. Sorry if you mentioned that. Our Wi-Fi keeps cutting out every time someone in the restaurant decides to watch a video on their phone. So, but I made sure to launch the meeting from my home computer, so at least the host is always on. So if we cut out, sorry about that. Michael's done really great graphic design work for us, really since about March or so. He's been doing the majority of the graphic work for Klamath Film all year. So he's done a really good job with that. And,
Awesome.
and Michael, I know you have a lot of interest in virtual reality stuff. I'm not sure if SOU has looked into doing anything like that at all.
Yeah, I've taught a couple of virtual reality classes. So we're in kind of an interesting nexus of things. So we have the digital cinema program, and there's the emerging media and digital arts program. And so the way we've been sort of splitting this is that EMDA has been doing a lot of more of the virtual worlds, like doing like 3D modeling and animation for virtual reality and doing AR type work, where we've been doing more stuff around like 360 documentary and stuff like that, using 360 cameras. And so we always sort of try to find like what's our natural fit in all this. We invested quite a bit of money, I think almost $30,000 over the last like 3 years in VR equipment and doing different classes in VR. And honestly, it was one of my big initiatives. I was a little disappointed because, and I think we face this with VR like every 5 years. There's like, this is the year VR is going to break out. And so we kind of went in on that a couple years ago when that started to be the thing again, and then it sort of died off again. Like one of our sort of third wheel in our or the third leg of the tripod in our program, along with my colleague Christopher Lucas, there's Brandon Givens, who runs our digital media center. He oversees all the facilities and equipment, and he does teach with us as well. He goes to NAB every year and to sort of check out like what are the big trends in equipment, what are the like technologies people are talking about, because it's really important to us that even though we're a small program and a very resource strapped program, we also want to be like on that cutting edge for our students. So literally like 3 years ago, the entire theme of NAB was VR. Like there was basically every single company was saying we're 100% going into VR. And so he kind of jumped into that, and it was like the next year, everybody's like, "Oh, VR, we lost so much money in VR." So I think VR is still really exciting. It's just like we haven't figured out how to get the adoption rates up yet, and I think until like the people really find that breakout headset that's so accessible and cheap, and it may need to be one of those things like you see in the movies now, where it's like it's just literally glasses and then you just touch the thing and it dims. Now you're in VR or something. Until it's that easy, it may never take that leap beyond just gaming. But
Right. Yeah, I was watching actually just yesterday how Jon Favreau used like a Vive controller to do like the virtual camera VR shoots for The Lion King and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, and a bunch of different things like that, and how that kind of like led to what they've been doing for The Mandalorian. And I was like, oh man, that's so cool, because I got the Vive back when it first came out and loved it, did a ton of VR stuff, and then earlier this year with Half-Life Alyx, I got the Index because Half-Life's like my all-time favorite games ever, and had to get into that. So I'm definitely real big on VR, and at least for like the hardcore PC gaming community, it has found success and it has taken off. But like what you're saying, like the mass kind of market VR headsets are just now starting to find their footing, almost like 3 years later after it was supposed to have taken off.
Yeah. We have a Vive Pro. We have a couple of Vive sets and a Vive Pro and some Oculus sets. And I agree. I think I'm actually more interested in the potential for VR as a actual production tool, right? Like, so the ability, for instance, if you look at some of these previs tools that are out there now, I think it'd be pretty amazing as a director to go into VR and be able to walk a virtual version of my set and with like virtual version of my actors and do the blocking and have my virtual camera and like get to play in that virtual realm before I show up on my real set. So I think even beyond like things like they're truly animated, like The Lion King, where it makes total sense, or Pixar films and those kinds of things, I think even the regular, I mean, we just had in one of our classes, we had the first AD, I'm forgetting his last name, Michael Hewson or House. I would have to look it up. The first AD on Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, and he also did 1917. He was showing us all like just like every single shot of that movie was previs. So like they'd already done it before doing it. It was very kind of Hitchcockian. Like Hitchcock basically storyboarded everything. He said like the boring part was making the film. But I think VR could be similar, right? Is that once VR really gets solid for even the low budget indie film that's thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna be shooting in all like small location. Well, yeah, but because you're a low budget indie film, you're only gonna have so little time with that location. You got to save every dollar. So why don't you do your previs in a Vive, right? And so I think that kind of stuff is going to take off and have a real impact.
Beyond Vive and Oculus, one thing that we've gotten into, at least in our house, is I got just one of those cheapo goggles that you use with your phone that costs like $10. But there's an app called Within that has a whole bunch of films, 360 films within that are compatible with your phone. And so like we have a 7-year-old in our house who just loves, like wants to watch every single one of those little short films that work totally fine with just basically having your phone like 2 inches from your face, but it is VR, and it's full 360. So that could be kind of the layman's way to get into it before people fully invest in the Vive and Oculus gear. I know PlayStation 4 is having a big impact on virtual reality stuff because they've been able to incorporate it into some of their games and whatnot. But I think that's kind of maybe the entryway, and as people get more comfortable with it, then they can get into the more updated gear.
Yeah, I think it's honestly the VR thing it's now it feels the closest I think we've ever been in my lifetime to being at the birth of cinema, right? Like right now it's still at that sort of novelty phase, and everyone's sort of like, is it ever going to go beyond novelty? Is it just the Nickelodeon, right? Like we're gonna or whatever. And what we're waiting for is our porter, right? Our Griffin, these people who figure out how to take that VR storytelling and create a whole new language for it, because the language isn't there yet. And it's totally there for gaming, for where the gamer is the storyteller, right? Essentially, right? They control that experience. Like I did, and Michael, I don't know if you're familiar with this. There's a company called The Void, and they have locations in like a few different places, and they have one, and they also have them in the downtown Disney and in Anaheim and in Orlando. They have experience called Shadows, I think Shadows of the Empire or something. It's a Star Wars thing, and it's basically it's basically like immersive laser tag, and it is one of the most it was my train coming into a station Lumiere brother moment, right? Where basically what happens in this thing is you like get a briefing, and it's set in the world of Star Wars, and there are characters from the movies, and like you get a briefing, you're going on a mission, and they put you on a pack, and you're holding stuff, and they put down your visor, and what you're a rebel pretending to be a stormtrooper, going into a imperial base to locate an object, and you start out on a shuttlecraft, and the shuttlecraft is moving around, and the shuttlecraft lands, and the doors open, and you're on a volcano planet. But like this is all like in a soundstage sized environment, and it's completely 4D in the sense of like, every surface you touch is a real surface. When the thing opened, you were hit by a blast of hot air. And so they had like heaters and fans to make it, and like humidity to make it feel like you're on a lava planet. If I would run, you'd run across a bridge, and you'd feel like the sound of a bridge, and then like you touch a control panel, and you could feel the buttons, and then you're shooting blasters at people. But like I felt like I was inside Star Wars. Like it was almost, now again, it wasn't quite photorealistic, but it was really close, and it was smart because Star Wars, it was all stormtroopers and like droids, so there were no faces for the uncanny valley. And so it felt really close to photorealistic, like you're jumping into Star Wars. And like honestly, like if that thing were my town, I would just go and do that every weekend. It was so much fun. But it's also, I imagine some venture capitalists built this thing They probably put, untold hundreds of millions of dollars into it, and it probably hasn't made any money yet. But once we get able to do that kind of experience at a sort of a mass level where anyone, it was like going on the holodeck in Star Trek. Like it was, right? It was pretty amazing.
So Andrew, this is Tom Cooley, who's one of our members. He's the one who was doing the casting call tonight, which is why a lot of our membership was inside as opposed to outside. You had a question?
Oh, I'm coming in the middle of this thing. Are you talking about like a void experience?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was talking about, the void.
No.
Have you
Okay,
done it?
I know of it. We were doing it in Times Square there for a short time with a haunted house one about 3-4 years ago.
Okay.
They're out of Pleasant Grove, Utah, if I remember correctly. Yep. And right now, there's Livermore going on, though it's drawn back because of what's going on, what's happening with the fires.
Right.
But it's a marvelous experience. Everybody should give it a whack, even if you're in a wheelchair. It's worth it.
So, Tom, we're talking with Andrew Gay, who's the head of the SOU Digital Cinema Program.
Fantastic.
So, Tom has decades of experience in film, going back to like 1960s, right? Yeah. So, yeah. Actually, I guess Lori and Mary Jane, I'm not sure if you two have had a chance to ask a question yet. Do you have something to ask Andrew?
So, Andrew, I have a question, though this is maybe a little off topic from what you had been talking about, but for lack of a better word, you sort of had a rough and crazy beginning into film.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering, like, especially when you're talking about it now, like, can you believe that you like persisted, or like what really like helped you like stick with it, if that makes sense? Because or maybe just like finding teaching and finding that groove with it, and then was like, this is my avenue and I really like film and I can pair the two together. But yeah, I didn't know if something really sort of stood out to you on like why you kept with it. And
yeah, that's a great question. We just did in spring we were kind of the cornerstone of our program is this thing that we haven't even gotten to do yet, which is called the crew experience. That's supposed to be this 12 credit term long immersion into production where we all work together on a project as one unified crew. We were all ready to launch it this spring, and then because of COVID we got shut down. And what we did instead is we ended up, because we had all these students enrolled, is we spent the entire term interviewing just amazing people. And that was like where the first AD from 1917 came in. And this is like a very similar question to what like we talked to every single person about, because they do all tell their stories. And the same thing that they all said was that like every not a single one of them said I'm doing what I thought I was going to be doing when I started. They all ended up in places where they totally didn't expect to be. They all said like there is no one way to do it. Don't try to model your career after me because it's all a series of accidents and things that happen. And I think the most consistent piece of advice was sort of like, say yes to everything until you really can say no. Because you're gonna you're gonna get all these experiences, and then finally you're gonna start to get good at something and be able to say no to the things that you don't want to do. So that's some advice. But I guess for me personally, the other thing I always tell students whenever I'm talking to them about careers is that to me, picking a career, that people there's often people who say like, oh, do what you love, do what you love. And I think, sometimes that can be bad advice. I mean, there's some things that people love that they're just never going to make money at. But I think the better advice is to find the job, because every job has bullshit. And that's why I tell all my students this. Every job has bullshit. And what you have to do is you have to find a job that gives you enough that feeds you and makes you excited that it outweighs the bullshit and makes the bullshit tolerable. And so like with film production, to me, it's about finding that thing or any aspect of film, what is the thing that does that for you? Because like, for me, it wasn't production coordinating. you know, for me, you know, I'm actually really good at doing forms. Like even at SOU, like that's part of the bullshit thing I get drawn into, because people are like, oh, you did that form, can you do one? Like I like it's a talent I have that I regret that I have, but I'm great at the tedious sort of like making documents and that kind of thing. So it made sense that I got into production coordinating or like doing call sheets in the AD department or whatever. But it wasn't what fed me, and so that was not a job that was working for me. But there are people who love that. There are people who like, man, you give them Excel and let them make spreadsheets all day, and that will feed them. That's like a thing that gets them excited. And I think production, similarly, like there are people who do not care what they're working on. And I don't mean that in a callous way. I mean that literally, they just love production. They just love being on a set and the feeling of being on a set. And it could be the dumbest thing or the most like highbrow thing. It could be with the most talented people or total trash. Just the excitement of being on a set feeds them, and that's good enough for them. I wasn't that kind of person. I'm a kind of person who I love being on a set when I really care about the project, but I find sets tedious when I don't care about the project. And so that was just me. And so I think it's really about figuring out in your career, what is that part of it that feeds you, and how much of the bullshit can you tolerate, and where do you find that balance? And so I found it in film education. Like there are a lot of aspects of being a teacher that I don't love, but there's enough of this aspects that I do love that it easily, you know, goes the other way. I think starting out is really hard. And that's one thing I try to prepare my students for, is that, you know, there are a lot of careers where there's some expectation that like, oh, you get out of college or whatever, and you go and apply for entry level positions, and you get hired by a company, and you now work for that company, and as you work up, you know, you'll eventually work your way up that company, and maybe you'll get a better job at a different company. But like there's this sort of clear pathway. And for film, I think, and I even tell parents this too, because I don't want to sell them on something. Like I tell them, like, you know, if you're sending your students to us, don't think that there's this clear thing that they get out of school and they go to the office and apply with their film degree and like, here, I'm here to get the job in movies, because that's not how it works. And that there probably will be like 2 years where you, or if I'm talking to a student, or if I'm talking to a parent, your child is working at Starbucks or bagging groceries, and you're thinking, oh my God, they went into debt and when they went to college for this, because it's like you're constantly looking for that gig to get you in your foot in the door. But then suddenly you get your foot in the door on your first gig, and suddenly, you know, people like you because you work hard and you make an impression, and then you keep getting rehired because of that. So I think that to stick with this career path, you have to be someone who does have some passion for it, because it's very easy to get discouraged early. And you sort of have to know going into it, like, okay, there's a phase of everyone's career in film where it's the discouragement phase. So you will feel discouraged. That's just going to be a part of it. And then knowing what that goal is, so that, you know, like, you know, what makes me happy is this. So if I can just keep with it long enough to get to that, that'll be good. That will be worth it. So we spend a lot of time with our students, really thinking about, like, you know, what are your goals? What do you want out of this career? And to think about different goals. Like, you know, there's this personal goals. What's important to you personally? Is it family? Is it time with your friends? Is it travel? You know, because there's some jobs in this industry that aren't good fit for those personal goals. And then there's, like, you know, what are your professional goals? Like, do you want to have a certain level of job security, or you want insurance, or those kinds of things? Well, there's going to be certain jobs in the industry that aren't going to be good for that. What are your creative goals? What feeds you creatively? And maybe that doesn't have to be in your career, but you should be thinking about that too. And it's all about balancing, I think, the personal, the professional, and the creative, and finding ways to meet enough of each of those needs to be happy. Don't know, did that answer your question, Lori?
Yeah, no, that totally did. Wow. That is Thank you. I really appreciate that answer, and definitely a lot to think about. But yeah, no, that fully answered it. Yeah.
You should maybe check out. There's a book that we used with our students, and it's not a film book at all, but it's called Designing Your Life, and it's sort of just like a career exploration book, and it talks about that kind of stuff. It's really all about digging into yourself and thinking about what are those things that you care about and that matter to you and that fulfill you, and figuring out what kind of career paths work for that. And I actually found it was really helpful for our students, even though it wasn't film centric, that just that process of really thinking about all those different components of what it means to build a life. A lot of them said, wow, I wish I had gotten this book in high school. Um, so
Mhm.
you might want to check that out.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I think I have another question for you, Andrew, if
Sure, I think you
Mary doesn't
probably
have
lost.
one. I know she hasn't got a turn yet.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think so. Okay, I was giving her a second if she had a question. You mentioned, now I'm losing my train of thought. You're talking about on the, like, especially if you're working on a set or something, about kind of needing that passion in the project to kind of not necessarily push you through the tedium, but to just really enjoy your time there. And I've
Mhm.
noticed, like, obviously, most of my creative experiences are with writing, and I kind of have gone through the same thing where it's like I really enjoy even the tedious things
Mhm.
if I am passionate about a project. But one thing that I kind of ran into over maybe the past year or two is losing the passion or the interest in the projects I was working on and the ideas I've had. And
Mhm.
it's like I want to find that passion again, but usually it comes from starting over. And obviously, especially like if you're trying to support yourself through, any kind of creative work, you have to actually finish projects and make
Mhm.
progress, get your foot in the door, that sort of thing. And I was wondering if you had any advice about that, like how can you reignite the passion in an older project, or maybe if have you lost interest in a project before, and what was your experience with that?
Sure, that's a great question. I can say like in screenwriting, for instance, most screenwriters will tell you that the worst thing you can do for your craft is to work at one project at a time. Um, so at any given, and I wish I could remember. There's actually a particular screenwriter who recently wrote a piece about like their breakdown, and I thought it was really good. And I think I probably forgot to bookmark it, but it was something along the lines of like, that they were saying like every day I spend this much of my day working on a rewrite of a past project. This part of my day working on my first draft on this project. This part of my day working on outlining for a project I want to write next, and then this amount of my day just generating ideas. And like so they like broke it down to like that level. Because as a professional writer, they have like they try to work at like an 8-hour workday of just writing, even though they're not necessarily being paid that way. So um, you know what I've seen most writers say, those who are professional writers, is like you have to have a writing routine. You have to commit yourself to that writing, but don't think that like I'm just going to write only on this thing until I'm done with it, because that is a recipe for really losing that love of what you're doing, because any kind of writing is going to involve lots of rewriting, right? Lots of tweaking, lots of polishing. And when you're reading that thing for, it's the same thing with editing, right? Like when you're editing a feature film, I directed, as in my grad program, I wrote, directed, and edited a feature, and it's like there gets to this point where like, oh my God, I've been working on this thing for 2 years, and I don't ever want to see that actor's face ever again. Like, do I really have to listen to this take one more time? Um, and so you have to. I think it's really healthy to be having that other thing in the back pocket that you're starting to work on, or exploring those other ideas. Now, what you have to avoid, of course, is like using that as an excuse not to continue and finish the thing you started, right? So, I would say just set reasonable goals and say, all right, I know I have to do this thing. I don't want to do this thing, but I'm going to spend 2 hours today doing it. But my reward for doing that is that I'm going to get an hour just to play on whatever I feel like writing next, right? Um, and I think the same way. Like the parts for me in my job, for instance, I hate grading. I I I actually have a philosophical objection to grades. I think that in life. Most of the time, you'll either get hired, fired, or promoted, and you won't really know why. No one ever like walks around being like, "Yes, you today was an A," and nope, today was really a B day. They're meaningless. They don't tell you anything about whether or not you're really learning. So I would abolish all grades if I could. But I work at a university and grades are a thing, and so I have to figure out ways to grade, and I hate it. So same kind of thing. Like I'll be like, oh, I really don't want to grade today, but I'll say, all right, well, there's this thing I want to work on. I'm going to give myself this much time to grade today, and my reward for getting that done, that tedious thing done, is I get to do the thing I really want to do. So I think it's just about finding that balance, and to always be looking for those new ideas, because even if you get excited about a new idea that you can't pursue right now, there's no one ever got in trouble because they had like a wealth of great ideas yet to explore. That's all. It can only be a good thing.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, I've had those days or those times where it's like there's so many different ideas I have. It's like, oh, which one do I start with and what do I make of it? Because, yeah, especially just through my program, I've had the chance to kind of learn about and dabble in different just genres of writing, or even like modes of writing, like twine games or role playing books, like all kinds of different things. And so instead of just like, oh, every single thing is going to be like a short novel that's within my ability to write, it's like, no, I can make it all kinds of different things. And that definitely has helped me branch out. I guess right now I've just having trouble feeling the passion for any of those different like folders full of different types of ideas I've had. And it's like I did recently come up with a new one that I kind of think has reignited. But I like your suggestion of kind of like, if there's one that you've put a lot enough time into that you should see it through, like still work on it, but reward yourself with that other project that you're like really passionate about at the time. And so I'm
Yeah,
definitely gonna
and I
give
and
that
I,
a shot.
I also think burnout is a real thing. I mean, you spend too much time on anything, um, you can also give yourself permission to say like, all right, so I'm a little burnt out. What are things that I can do to like refresh my mind? So is it like, all right, I need to get away from it all for a couple days, or I need to, find, sit on the couch and veg for a day watching my favorite movies, or read a book by someone I've never heard of before, or whatever it might be. That's like a thing to sort of refresh yourself. I think it's good to give yourself those outs too, to say like, all right, I need to reboot. I'm a little burnt out.
Okay. Yeah, funnily enough, I've actually noticed that sometimes a video game or a film is tends to be what sparks my like writing interests, more
Mm.
so than books. Like I love reading books, I enjoy it, but usually it's video games or films that ignite like my actual interest in writing for whatever reason.
Yeah, then I would just say like, you looking at building in a time for you to explore new movies. Give yourself that, build that into your routine. All right, I'm gonna watch a new movie every day that's gonna expose me to new ideas.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, Lori, I saw you unmuted for a second. Did you have a question?
Oh, no, I was sort of gonna make a comment because I've also had issues with like being sort of stuck creatively, and like you have a lot of projects and then it's like, but I like started this, I should finish it, but then it's just like almost just like torture trying to like actually work on it. Um, but one thing that I have found is to like completely put it away, like put it out of sight, out of mind, and then be working on other stuff, and then like all of a sudden be like, oh, what about that one project? And sometimes just by having it like completely out of mind is helpful. um but sort of on a funny side note, so I write also, and I was having a hard time writing something, but there was this comic book that, or I guess sort of a comic book that I read when I was a kid, but it was like ladles and jelly spoons, but it was about ladies and gentlemen, but it was just like a goofy spin on like this whole narrative. And so by just plugging that in, it just like brought like a funness to writing that helped to like me start writing again. I don't know if that's helpful, Michael, but that was just a thought that I
No,
had sort
I
of recently.
enjoyed, like, for whatever reason, hearing about any writer and their personal process just that always makes me like, oh, I want to write like right now, like kind of thing. And I think honestly, a big part of me is just the last like, well, since almost this whole year has just been so unbearably busy for me. Like I didn't actually have free time for myself to do anything until maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm done in the afternoon and don't actually have to keep working until midnight. I'm like, what am I going to do with my time kind of thing? And I'm sort of like trying to just get used to that before I start taking on like creative projects and being productive with the free time. I'm allowing myself like catch up on some Netflix and whatever else. And I definitely want to jump into more projects again. But a big part of that too is like prior to all that busyness starting, I was still trying to cope with some like post breakup kind of like depression, anxiety, and things like that. And that really hurt my passion for a lot of those projects. I did have one project that was sort of like my way to work through those emotions, like using that opportunity to write sort of like a sad love story kind of thing. And that definitely carried me through for a bit. But then I lost, basically, once I kind of got over the issues, I then lost my passion for that project. I was like, oh, I don't want anything to do with that thing. Like, I don't feel those emotions anymore. I don't identify with this project. But then I never really found the passion for those other projects again. And then didn't have the time to all of a sudden once this year started. So I'm just trying to like, I guess, balance out that like the natural passion and then maybe the possible lack of passion from those hard times I went through. So it's definitely a lot of stuff to juggle and figure out, but I'm slowly getting there and I definitely feel my passion reigniting. I'm just trying to find that last final spark I need, I guess.
Huh.
Sorry, my
Looks like
child
Kurt's
was asking for ice cream.
Well, and
We're
oh,
back. That we left. People keep trying to watch videos on their cell phones, I guess. But so we're back
Welcome
again.
back. We've just been chatting about inspiration.
yeah, I was
Perfect.
wondering,
Well,
Andrew. Oh,
Go ahead, Lori.
go ahead, Lori.
yeah, I was wondering. So besides teaching, are you working on any creative projects that you want to share? Um, like do you find the balance with that, or is that
That's a great
feel too
question.
much like work?
Yeah, no, that was one of the funny things, right? Is that there's the myth of the college educator, which is that, oh, you teach for 9 months, but you get paid for enough for a year, so then you spend the summer doing research or your creativity or whatever. I have I since being a grad student, I have never not taught 12 months of the year. So even though I'm on just like normal faculty on a 9-month teaching contract, in order to pay my bills, I have to take on additional teaching in the summer. So I have taught 2 to 3 classes every summer since being a grad student. And so that whole idea of like, oh, well, if being a teacher, you'll have all this time to do other things is totally not true at all. And that's been particularly true at SOU, where we are quote unquote a teaching university. What that means is that a lot of universities are research universities, which means that teachers have a much lower teaching load, and part of their what they're being paid to do is either research or scholarship, or for creative people is to be creatively active. So whether it's if you're in an English department, you're writing novels or whatever. And so at those kinds of universities, it's not uncommon to teach maybe 4 classes a year. And, for example, I'm teaching 5 classes this term, this coming term. My typical total balance is usually 9 to 10 classes a year during the regular year, and then then the additional 2 or 3 in the summer. So yeah, I've had a lot less time to be creative than I might have hoped to be when I set down this track. That being said, one of the things that, speaking of the crew experience, that project was going to be something where, because the goal was to do something where it sort of feels like it's something that belongs to all the students, and all the students are in the crew. So we didn't want it to set it up to be where there's a crew director, a student director. So this was built around a system where a faculty member would be the director, and a professional working with a faculty member would be the first AD, and so kind of the person overall overseeing the set, and every other person on the crew would be students. And I wrote a script for this project around the educational experience. So I started with a list of things that I wanted students to have to do to learn. And so like my list had things like, all right, I want them to like, we want to make sure we shoot indoors and outdoors, night and day. We want to shoot scenes with multiple actors and dialogue. We want to scene with crowds. We want a scene with a child to make them have to work with child actors. I wanted to shoot something in the wilderness, so they had to lug gear on trails. And so I had all these sort of obstructions in front of me, and said, all right, now I got to figure out how to write a script for this. Oh, and also we were also thinking about how this project could generate footage for our editing class, so that students could work on it and do different cuts. So it was also like thinking about particular kinds of scenes to cut together. And so around that, I wrote a short script. And once I had it written, I actually was like, oh, well, I actually like this thing. And so I started submitting it to writing contests, and it's won a couple of awards, and it's been a finalist in some other things. And so that was a lot of fun. And that was obviously another aspect of what was disappointing when the crew experience got canceled, is we're now delayed another year on making that film. But I hope that we are able to go into production in spring. If not spring, maybe summer. Maybe we could do it as a summer thing. But I'm really excited about that project, because it ended up being a project that, even though I sort of wrote with all these sort of creative limitations in front of me, it ended up being a piece where I could sort of come to terms with some. I had two really dear friends pass away in 2018. One was one of my high school mentors. He was my homeroom teacher and English teacher and journalism teacher in high school, and was one of the people who early on really encouraged me to write and pursue my creative voice. And the other was my best friend in film school, a woman who I collaborated on multiple projects, and was just one of my favorite people to ever be on a set with. So both of those people passed away unexpectedly 2 years ago, and so I used the writing of this script as also an opportunity to sort of kind of think about grief from a creative perspective. And so I wrote something that actually ended up being like, wow, this is actually something I'm really proud of, and I feel is powerful, and can be a real creative outlet. So I have to say, like, until, let's see, a year and a half ago, I think a good almost 8 years passed between me writing anything creative. I got in a real rut of like, just like, I'm just like focused on syllabi and course plans and all that, which is its own kind of creativity. But I had not sat down and written my own things in a really long time. And I got sort of the bug to be like, I really need to find time. Well, actually, what started was a project that I really loved, which was something I'd never done before, which is that I actually started with this VR thing. We got VR equipment, and I didn't know what to do with it really. I was like, all right, now I got this gear. What am I going to do with this stuff? And so I reached out to OSF, Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and I said, like, hey, could we do like a VR project with Shakespeare or something? And they were like, oh yeah, that sounds really interesting. Come in for a meeting. And so I went in for a meeting with these people, and it was sort of a bait and switch, because they were like, as soon as I got in the meeting, they're like, yeah, that will never happen because of the unions. We will never be able to do anything with our main plays. But they're like, we want to do this. This was like their educational department. They're like, we want to do this immersive play thing, and we think maybe VR could be a part of that. So I ended up in 2017 or 2018? I think it was 2017. I spent a whole year in a writer's room, which I'd never done before. I've only ever written by myself. I've had like friends who are like writing sounding boards, like people I would often go to, like, all right, sit in a room with me and help me solve this problem, but never someone who's like a writing partner. And this was a room of people, and it was a multidisciplinary room. Like some people came from theater, some people came from like dance, and it was like people who were actors, people who were writers, people who were producers, people who were technical people. And we wrote an immersive play together, because I came to this first meeting thinking they were gonna like hand out the play and we were gonna talk about staging it. And the first thing was like the guy leading it was like, all right, and he went on the whiteboard and wrote the word legacy. It's like, who has ideas? And like, wait, I thought you guys had a play. No, and like it was like, no, we were gonna do this from scratch. So and for that thing I did I did a lot of the media I directed all the media for this immersive play, but we also did, and that was actually the first thing I'd written on my own, was a prequel VR experience. So the idea was that the audience would come and do this immersive play where it's very interactive, and then they could watch this VR experience that would give a prequel about the characters in the play, and would sort of give them like little clues about why some of the things had happened. It ended up again that we ran into the same union issues, so we weren't able to give out the experience, and instead it happened. We really lucked out that we happened to build a circular set, and we had 8 projectors in this thing. So very last minute, we divided it into 8 segments of video and projected it as a 360 movie, which was kind of cool. But so that experience, which was my first writing experience since I wrote my feature in grad school, was like really got me back to like, oh, like I do need to be a storyteller. I think I'd gotten so comfortable with being someone who helped other people tell their stories, which I think I'm really good at. Like I just taught a feature writing class this summer, and I think if I had not gone into teaching, I think probably if I had like kept going in the industry and finding where I belonged, I probably would be in like a development. I think I would be like the kind of person who like helps solve story problems. I think I'm very good at that, and I enjoy doing it. And there's nothing that's like more fulfilling than helping another artist like figure out what it is they're trying to say. But I think that reawakened in me the fact that like, no, I'm still a storyteller too, and I still have stories to tell. So after that, I started really working on some short scripts, because just again, I would love to do another feature, but my schedule is such that I just don't see when I would get to again. And they're also, take investment and all that. So I have 2 short scripts that I've done the last 2 years that I want to shoot soon.
Well, Andrew, it is 8 o'clock now. This is normally when we end our meetings, but I know we've had Wi-Fi issues yet again here. Thank you for going on and continuing to talk even while we were disconnecting. If we want to end things here, great. Appreciate your time. If you want to keep talking, by all means, I'm sure some folks would still want to stick around. So it's totally up to you. But it is 8 o'clock now. This is normally when we end.
Yeah, well, I probably should get heading out. I gotta get my kids to bed here soon. If there's any like last minute burning question or something, I'd be happy to address it. But otherwise,
Tom has one here.
Just a real quick one on that project you were working on. We had the 8 screens, the 360.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the world did you show that, and how did it go over?
So it was so what OSF had done is they have a small black box theater called the Swan that they haven't used much in years, and so they built that's where they were doing the play. So the way this immersive play worked is that they built these circular sets, and like the audience came into it, and it was a walking play. Like so the audience was walking around throughout the set and being engaged, and like the actors are talking to the audience. So it was a little bit like going to a haunted house. It kind of felt like that kind of thing. And so it just happened to be that the set designer ended up designing it in these concentric circles, and that all the media that we had designed for it was built around being able to project it onto these circular sets. So we happened to have 8 projectors. And so it was not planned at all. It just ended up being that we were lucky that set up. And so the way we did the prequel, because the original idea was that they would do the play, and then we even like, Kurt was talking about the cardboards, like the viewers that you put on your phone. We ordered hundreds of these cardboard viewers because we were going to hand them out to the audience at the end. They were going to go home and watch this prequel that we made. But because last minute the union said we couldn't do it, we projected it. And so what happened is that because this was done by their engagement and education program, the participants in the play after it was done all were brought into the center for discussion about the experience. And so during that discussion, they would bring up the prequel and they would watch the prequel, and that would be one of the discussion points. And so it actually worked pretty well.
I've only seen that done once, and it was Disney who did it.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't as high quality as Disney's. They have some really great 360 projectors, but it was good enough to sort of get the idea across. It was pretty interesting.
Well, it sounds fascinating. When are you going to do it again?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know. I would love to do it again, and the folks I collaborated with would love to do it again too. It's just the opportunity hasn't come up yet.
Okay.
Cool. Really appreciate the time, Andrew. Thank you so much for all the information. Thank you for helping to teach the film camp. It would not have been the same without you. So your participation in that was great. Let's do it again sometime.
All right. Well, thank you all. I'll talk to you later.
Yep.
Take care.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody. So Lori, Mary Jane, Michael, and those who are here, quick reminder, the film festival is September 18th through the 20th at the Ross Ragland. Tickets will be very limited to the general public because of the state mandate crowd size restrictions, but we are going to be selling tickets online to watch the entire festival on demand. So that is the way that I recommend people to check it out, is to pick up an online ticket and watch the festival from the comfort of home.
Yeah, with popcorn.
Sounds
So-
good. Thank you, Kurt.
Yep. So we will be back here again October, I don't know, whatever the first Thursday is. Everyone at KIF.
October 1st.
Okay. October. Everyone. First will be our next meeting. Thank you, everyone, as always, for joining. Really appreciate it.